I made a post not too long ago, and it goes back. The story behind the post is a few years ago, Blaine and I were on the swimming pool on vacation. We play a stupid game called Monster in the Corner. So we come up with these different games, and it's whoever stays in the corner wins. So you try to fight the other person out of the corner. Well, I'm crippled, got broken hips, my shoulder hurts. So now he's big, so he actually stands a chance of winning. Plus, he still has a problem with winning and losing. So somehow or another, I got to make sure before the vacation's over, he ends up being victorious for the whole thing. But he gets loud, he has fun, he plays, and we have a good time. And a couple years back, one of the parents or somebody who was in the pool just looked at me and said, "Can you calm your kid down?" And I looked at him and said, "No." And he gave me this look like, "You ignorant son of a bitch," and fuck, whatever. We just went about our own thing. He grabbed his shit and left. And the reason I do that, and the reason, and I can give other examples of, him pressing all the buttons in the elevator, and somebody like, really? Then my reply would be, yeah. And I am not going to ever say, and I used to do this, I apologize, my son has autism. I will never say that, not with him present. Now, I will talk to him later, like, "Hey, Blaine, you shouldn't have done, maybe we want to keep it down." When nobody else is around, I will parent. All right, but I am not going to provide him the option to have a victim card that he can think in his own mind, "Hey, I can do this because I have autism." No, he can be himself the same way everybody else can be himself. There's no way I'm going to give anybody else that parenting trump card, for that. Even if his behavior is completely off base, I'm still going to look and say, basically some snide ass remark that says, "I don't really care. You're indifferent to me." And leave it at that. That's how I handle it as a parent and have for many years, because one time I saw, it was an elevator situation, and I did say that, and I had Bryce in the elevator with me. And now I got both of my kids in the elevator, and all I thought to myself immediately after I said it is, what message did I just send my kids? Just because I wanted to take the comfortable route. Because it's always more comfortable to say, "I'm sorry because," and it's like, fuck that. I don't know this person. I'll never see this person again. I don't give two shits what they think about me. They don't care about my, I'm completely indifferent. Now, different situation. You got 3 or 4 kids at Skype Jump or a restaurant or whatever it is, and they're getting a little loud. They're getting a little, now somebody comes up to you and they say, "Hey, look, can you," and let's say the kids are in earshot range, or let's just assume if they're not in earshot range, yes, more than likely you're going to say, "Look," because it's a point to educate. Okay, that you never want to, as a parent, you never want to miss that point to educate. Don't be a dickhead to somebody if your kids are not in earshot range. Then you can tell them, "Look, he's a little excited right now. He is on the spectrum." And then, "Oh, okay." Then everybody, I've never met a person yet that was like, "Oh, fuck." Usually they're like, "Oh, fuck, I'm sorry." It's like, no, don't be sorry. You have every right. All right. Now, when the kids are in earshot range, do you change your narrative, or have you not thought about it?
I'm trying to think, there's really haven't been in a situation where it's like I have to excuse or apologize or anything along those lines. Just more basic of the principles. Like if the guys are doing something and it's just not respectful, well, it's not respectful. Yeah. So it's just like, hey, but it just depends. Are you going to be able to have that conversation with them and say, "Hey, I know you guys are having fun, but can you bring it down a little bit?" Well, yeah, they understand. Yeah. And then there was no need to play the autism card because that was just a basic thing, regardless of what the situation was. It's considerate just in general. Now, if the
hold that thought, because let me backtrack on that because you just made a great point that I didn't expand on. If they are saying something inappropriate or sexually inappropriate, usually is the case a lot of the times. Yes, correct them. If you're the parent, correct them. If you're a caregiver, correct them and make sure they know on that time this is wrong and not to do that. So my example, I should have pointed that out. And like if he was doing something way off the top, then I would have immediately said, bring it down. So I'm glad you brought that up because there's different levels of getting crazy, and sometimes they don't quite do a good job of that. So please go ahead.
Yeah, and then I'm just thinking of other situations where it goes into that planning, so to speak. So like if we're going to, like every single year we go, it's a tradition of ours that we go to the Spaghetti Warehouse, and you've gone there down in Columbus. It's busy, 2 floors. You have a ton of waitresses, waiters. So when I make the reservation, just from what I've seen, like I'm asking them, hey, I'm going to have a group. So I'm on the phone. Obviously, I'm not with the guys and having this conversation with them, but like planning for that because I just know the tendencies. Not everyone's going to be good with money. Not everybody's going to give a tip. Or I will have to urge the kid, hey, can you, like, how much did that cost? Okay, 10%. But like that conversation with that company is, hey, on this particular day, I'm going to have a group of 20 to 25 guys. They're all high functioning autism. They all have a high functioning autism. Can we please have an area on the second floor that is kind of not secluded, but we're not going to be next to a 8-year-old birthday party. So I try, just from what I've experienced, like I know those triggers for my guys, I know the triggers for Blaine and whoever I'm working with. So like in that I'm going to make every possible, effort of myself to make sure that we're not going to get in a situation because I know if we're next to, an 8-year-old birthday party, I've actually been in that. So I've been in that experience now where a kid has a balloon and one of our guys is getting hit on the head, and I can just see him, and he's getting into that. He's going to lose his shit. You know what I mean? And this happened maybe a couple years ago. This was a brand new guy that just went through the aspirations program, but this was the first time like now in the community with us, So I could just see his whole like inward, and he's going to explode at any moment. So at that point, like it wasn't, hey, 8-year-old boy, he has autism. Can you go somewhere else? Like that's not going to translate. I don't know his parents, where they're at or anything. So at that point, I said to the guy, I said, hey, I understand what's going on right now. The kid's being annoying. Your dad's downstairs. Why don't you take a break and go downstairs, chill out, and then we'll go from there. That's all we needed. He stood up, went down there. So like in that example, like it would have, like even if he didn't have autism, like I wouldn't go to the parent. I wouldn't try to mess up their birthday party or, hey kid, you're being an ass or whatever. Just very, like he's older. He's 18 years old. That's across from me. And he was who I needed to go to. He's the one that's annoyed. Hey, if you need a couple of seconds, head downstairs. And that's all he needed. He went downstairs, he came back, and, we were able to eat and there were no problems. So, when you're telling me about, like, the pool situation, like, you already know, like, what this game's about. You know what's going to, like, explode. And it's at that point, like, in my mind, if I were the parent in that situation, I would just, like, okay, we're going to have a fun time. I know the pool is going to be busy, crazy busy from 2 to 3 p.m. Well, we're going to go at 4 because it's just our time. I don't have to prove anything that he's socially going to be able to accept some type of criticism, But then that goes into a whole other topic that we can't plan everything and we can't like make it so that there's no adversity. But I think you just go back to your principles and your values, and then you figure out what is the root problem here, and how can I kind of change it. And I've never had, like, again, I had to play, setting up that the restaurant dinner. Like, I did that because I knew we needed a very patient waitress or waiter. I needed somebody that was, if somebody was like, well, what type of pizza is this? And they asked maybe 16 questions about this pizza, that I didn't have a waitress say, really? I told you already 16 times. So I kind of like safeguard that in a sense, but otherwise, does that answer a little bit?
I want to note that I think that it's less now than what I experienced when he was younger, and there were more meltdowns too, but I think that there's a couple of, it's kind of a biased answer where I'm always hesitant to kind of go down this path, because I do think that autism awareness is helping. I think people are becoming more aware. They're starting to understand that, maybe this child, has autism. He's not off, but maybe has autism. The other thing I always have to keep in mind is I am 5'11", 290 pounds. So if I'm with my son somewhere and he's doing something a little appropriate, people are going to be a little less inclined to say, hey, can you get your kid under control? Mm-hmm. Because I don't smile a whole lot and they think I'm going to break their face. Mm-hmm. So the pool is the only real example I could come up with that has been even recently current. Mm-hmm. But now you're taking a dude and submerging me in water, so the only thing you really see is my head, mm-hmm. And now when I got out of the pool, the guy's probably like, thank God, I shouldn't have said that shit, so I don't know if this is something that a lot of other parents have to deal with. I'm sure they do when they're younger, especially from, other family members, cousins and stuff like that. And so the best advice I can give from that regard is just communication, mm-hmm. That civil communication, and, don't send them a million frickin' websites or, all this and all that, just sit down, say, look, this is the deal. This is the behavioral tendencies. Some of them may get better. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they really grow out of any of them. They just learn how to control them. But don't we? Mm-hmm. It's there's that's what gets so weird with me with this whole thing is, yes, there's definitely neuro differences, mm-hmm. but we all grow up. Mm-hmm. We all change. Every single one of us are different, so it's how, I also have a child with autism, mm-hmm. so I have a distorted view. Right. What else you got?
And two, just real quickly, then we can kind of talk about Clint a little bit, where we get back to the autism awareness, and then your child is really rambunctious or has a meltdown and whatnot. They're causing a scene. They're annoying somebody, and for that person that's annoyed to say, control your kid, Clint Darden gave a great example. Like, this is autism awareness. Like, if that's happening, like, as the awareness of, you don't know the situation, you don't know, like, in Clint's mind, he's saying, he's thinking, well, my son has been up for, he didn't sleep at all, he threw up, mm-hmm. or whatever the dialogue was. And as a parent, I'm struggling. Like, I'm trying as best as I can. Can you just give me a break? You know what I mean? Don't tell me. I know my child's having a problem. But that was when we read that, it was just like, oh, like, we're always autism awareness or breast cancer awareness or whatever it may be. We're always thinking about the person that has the quote unquote ailment or whatever the condition may be, the disorder. But we don't think of, well, what about the caregivers? What about that mm-hmm. parent? So just something to throw out there.
Yeah, there was a great story, and I don't know if it was Stephen Covey that I read it from, but it's going back in either Brian Tracy, Stephen Covey, Zig Ziglar, stuff that I read many, many years ago, where he told a story of a guy on a train with two children, and the children were completely out of hand, just rambunctious, and, a businessman, on the train as well. And the guy didn't give two shits about his kids. They were just raising hell, and the guy just was completely oblivious, didn't give, and just whatever, and the business guy got to a breaking point where he said, you know what, can you settle your damn kids down? And then the other gentleman said, I apologize. My wife just died, and my kids are having a hard time dealing with it. I'm having a hard time dealing with it. And now all of a sudden your perspective just completely shifted from, oh my God, this guy's letting these two kids just tear the shit out of the train, into, oh my God, I can't imagine if I was this guy. So I think that's what Clint was trying to say, is sometimes, take a step back.
Yeah.
And I think we can all learn from that.
Yeah.
Okay, what you got?